I'm pleased to introduce Crowdsource the Truth viewers to a new guest today. I'm joined by Eric Rosenwald, and Eric is a journalist. He's got a background in aerospace engineering. He's a professional drone pilot, and he's a smart guy. I'm glad to have him with us here today. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing good, very good. Happy to talk with you. I think this is a very important story that hasn't gotten enough attention. So I'm thrilled to share this with your audience.
Yeah, I agree. It is a very important story, and it hasn't gotten nearly enough attention. You are, of course, on X. People can follow you at Rosenwald underscore Eric, and you have been on. There's all these different airplanes, aircraft,
hmm
various
hmm
things that were flying around in the sky. We've got all kinds of evidence that things were flying around before, sort of during, and after the time that Charlie Kirk was murdered, and they are at least extremely suspicious. Of course, Candace Owens has been talking about a jet with Egyptian registration. I was brought a story by John Cullen in the days after the murder about a U.S. Army ISR jet. I had found some images that led me to believe there were drones flying around, perhaps doing electronic exploits and things like that. You now have found not a jet, but a turboprop craft that was taking some sort of survey. Can you tell us what it is that you found and fill us in on this whole story if you could?
I started flight tracking using a service called adsbexchange.com. Many of your viewers are probably familiar with Flight Radar. That's a common tool that's like that. It allows you to see aircraft. But one of the problems with that and Plane Finder and some of these commercially available flight tracking services is that owners of aircraft can actually pay the services to block their aircraft. ADSB Exchange is great because it's a crowd-funded, or not crowd-funded, but crowd-sourced resource. Anyone can buy an antenna to listen to what are called ADSB broadcasts from aircraft. These are pings with basic data. None of it is encrypted. It's designed for safety, that aircraft can see where other aircraft are. It includes a few data points like airspeed, altitude. If the aircraft has a call sign, it will display that. And so when you go to their website, adsbexchange.com, you'll be able to look at a radar map. And most importantly, you can see a historical viewer. So you can look back at data that's provided by that. So the way it's crowdsourced is anyone can buy one of these antennas to listen to these pings from aircraft in their area. I actually have one on my house that I feed to the service. So I actually contributed to
Wow,
it
cool.
also. So I've been using this tool. That's why I recommend your viewers to focus on ADSB Exchange. It can't block aircraft, crowdsourced. It's a great tool. So I've been using this service to track aircraft for about 10 years. And my work with that, as far as journalism, started in about 2017 when I was tracking Jeffrey Epstein's aircraft and its movements in real time. I even had notifications set up on my phone so that I could get a notification every time his aircraft took off
Wow.
and landed.
That
And
sounds like another show right there.
it is, and it actually, the Epstein files kind of blew up that story and that reporting I've been doing as to why Jeffrey's aircraft was in Tucson, here where I live, Tucson, Arizona. And it actually involves Noam Chomsky. And it's a pretty wild story
Wow.
that
Whoa.
just blew up because of I came across a searchable database of the 20,000 documents provided recently by I believe, the House Oversight Committee. And so I'm plugging in gaps in the story I've been reporting on since 2019. I've been tracking Epstein's aircraft earlier than that. So over the past day, I've been diving into that, and I'm about to do some reporting that will shed light on some of that. So that was my
Wow.
first big story
Well,
with
excuse me for
tracking.
interrupting, Eric. Where will people be able to see that reporting? Because that sounds very interesting.
That is all on my website. I'm a freelancer, independent journalist. So that means sometimes I'll work for major publishers. I do a lot of video journalism work. So I will do that, but I've never been employed full time by a news agency. It's always been independent. I actually got into journalism in kind of a strange way. It's just a citizen journalist. So citizen journalism is something I never forgot my roots, and so that's how I did it. So basically, as far as this story, my experience doing that flight tracking, every time there's a major incident or major news event that might involve aircraft, I go back to the historical viewer on ADSB Exchange and just usually set the timer or the time for a few hours before whatever event it is, and just watch the aircraft. Something about this flight tracking stuff is that it really takes time to develop expertise on what you're looking at. It's very easy to see aircraft and make all kinds of conclusions. Something I always say is that every aircraft has its own personality type, and they usually fit into a series of categories. And so it's very easy to see something and think it's something big, and it's not. So and that's why it's kind of like a hobby, not just a news gathering tool. So I would encourage anyone who's looking into this to really dive into it and take a look at the aircraft around where you live. Sometimes it's great to go outside and look at the aircraft you see on your little radar screen in real time. The data is broadcast like that. So I did my usual thing with the Charlie Kirk assassination. I looked up a few hours before and just watched the aircraft fly around. And something that just immediately popped out was that particular aircraft, a surveillance aircraft, was flying over the university within an hour before the assassination, and then landed at Provo Airport, which is nearby. That I know has come up a lot in Candace Owens' reporting. So I see this, I look into the company, and something interesting about that flight, and you could see it on what you brought up there. There's some lines to the far left, upper left corner, where you'll see this rake pattern, and that's a key part of that. It's underneath where it says like 11:35 a.m. in that upper left corner. You'll see a rake pattern there. That was a mission that was flown just prior to the overflights of UVU campus. And it was over actually a Utah National Guard Army, basically an Army base
Wow.
that's primarily used for training. Now, I'm not insinuating that that has any ties or connection to the UVU campus, but it's important for context because these were the only two flight missions for the day. First over the Army base, and then immediately after that, flying to the UVU mission. So that's something I want to point out because it's important to get a bigger picture with that. Now, companies in the oil, gas industry, power companies, they have a real need for surveys of whatever it is they're doing. That includes photographic surveys, LiDAR, which is a system that captures sort of the 3D space of a given area that you're surveying. And so there are multiple options for a company, private company, or a government contractor to hire this company that owns the aircraft. It's called Mark Incorporated, MARC, and that's how. As soon as I saw this pattern, this rake pattern over UVU, I looked into the aircraft owner. This particular company, and you see the aircraft there in question, It has very sophisticated camera equipment for photographic surveys. And one of the things that jumped out as this being a photographic mission was the fact that the aircraft was flying this particular kind of rake pattern over a given area that is totally consistent with a photographic mission. So
Stitch the
that
images
was
together, right?
exactly hundreds, if not thousands of photos. I don't know the specs on the camera. Someone else, I haven't looked into that. Someone else in your audience might be able to look into that. There's information on their website about their equipment, so that's something worth exploring to determine what kind of resolution these photos were. So when I saw this, I looked into it. I reported it in a thread on X, and it's great that you have the company website up there too. I encourage your viewers to look into that. But one of the things that jumps out right away is this company has contracts with foreign governments, domestic governments, law enforcement is clearly one of their clients, right down to the U.S. Forestry Service. The Forestry Service has a great need to look at their things, and my guess is that the overflights of the National Guard base were related to some kind of contract with the military, which would be totally consistent with their kind of work. It's just this UVU overflight that jumps out. So my first question is not conspiracy related. It's just figuring out, did this aircraft take photos on this UVU run, that rake pattern, or was it a dry run? Were they just flying this pattern but not actually taking photographs? But it was a very, very important question to ask. Were photographs taken during the UVU mission? So some people actually confused me or accused me of being a conspiracy theorist with this report, which is absurd, really, because my primary questions were photographs taken? I
But
don't
let me
really
stop you for
care.
a second, Eric,
Yes,
because
yes.
there's a great point that you brought up with the ADS-B data, because these are radio broadcasts, just like you can go outside with an FM radio and turn it on and anybody can
Mhm.
pick up the radio broadcast. It's essentially the same thing. So it's like you can't hide that. The aircraft is broadcasting these
Yes.
signals so it doesn't collide with other aircraft. And even if someone is doing
Hmm.
something clandestine, they still need to have that turned on to not crash and die.
Yes.
So when you crowdsource this information, these radio signals with everybody else who has the antenna, this is like triangulated and decentralized and
Hmm.
redundant. There's like kind of no doubt that this plane was there. So
Yes.
the question of were photographs, I don't understand how that could be a conspiracy theory. You're just saying it's
Right.
like asking if the sky is blue.
Right. And what I always say too is that when it comes to the situation with the Charlie Kirk assassination, I don't really care if they were looking for a lost dog. If the photos exist from this survey mission over UVU, that's what's most important, because that would be incredibly important evidence, because it would mean there's a snapshot not only of the UVU campus but the area surrounding it. And so my first thought was the killer or potentially killers, if it were a conspiracy, are they captured in these images? And that would be huge. That would be absolutely huge, because it's possible these cameras could see faces on people, like they could be that detailed, and that is what's the most important question. And the secondary questions are, why was it there? Who ordered the flight? Those are important questions, but for me the first question was, does this bombshell evidence exist that could shed a great deal of light on on the assassination and what happened just prior to it. I believe it was about 45 minutes before the assassination when the last set of photographs were taken on
I
this
mean,
run.
isn't
So
isn't that in and of itself remarkably coincidental that this very specialized aircraft happens to be? I mean, it's not like this is an oil field. It's not like this is, what are they surveying right over? We can't really know, but it seems suspicious, doesn't it?
it does. It does. And it's important to look back at previous flights for an aircraft like this. There are some that appear to be related to the Forest Service not long before. Again, that's consistent with government contracts that this company has. But one of the things that's interesting too about the company is they list in their capabilities rapid response. So they do have the ability to get into a place quickly and collect imagery.
Right. But somebody hired these guys to be there. We don't know who. Obviously, this is a
Hmm.
private company. So it's interesting because if the government wants to do something and they hired a private company, it could
Hmm.
complicate your ability to get information about it because a private company doesn't necessarily need to tell you what they're doing. And
Yeah.
as you've pointed
Yeah.
out, this is not just somebody going out with a GoPro or a Tyler mount or some
Hmm.
kind of, this is some sophisticated DMC camera installation. I've certainly never heard of these things before. It's worth looking into, but I think people know cameras these days, even very sophisticated ones, are typically pretty small. These things must be doing something really special to be these gigantic, behemoths of whatever the hell
Hmm.
they are,
Yeah.
LiDAR, etc. So we really don't know what this is all about. The other thing we should mention is that this is not the U.S. Army Bombardier Global 6500 jet that was initially identified, initially brought to my attention by John Cullen. And it's also
Hmm.
not one of these Egyptian jets that Candace has been talking about. Obviously, everybody is very curious. Look, I don't want to knock Candace on this broadcast. I think it's potentially very important understanding what these Egyptian jets are, but I'm having a little difficulty understanding what she's getting at. I mean, she's tracking these jets. What were they
Hmm.
doing there? What are their capabilities? What does she suspect them of doing? I mean, you've just told us this thing is photographing the campus something like 45 minutes before Charlie is shot. Now, obviously, we
Hmm.
don't know why that is, but
Hmm.
if someone was planning a sophisticated military mission, reconnaissance right before you do it would be something you might expect to happen. I can't think of
Yeah.
too many reasons why we need this incredibly sophisticated and detailed photography of the UVU campus, but
Mhm.
you know, but before we go to Candace, the other thing I wanted to ask in sort of response to your question, you're asking, were these photos taken? And then the thing that prompted me to reach out to you was that you said somebody did send you photos. Aren't these from this flight?
So they didn't send them to me directly. There were two places that I published these images, or my story on this about the aircraft, and that was on X and on TikTok. And so I was looking through the comments on my TikTok post on it, and someone pointed me to an account that had published photos that were claimed to be from this specific flight. So I went to the account. It was a fairly new account. There was no name associated with it. It was just an anonymous Twit or TikTok user. And so I looked at the photos, and the first thing that jumped out with these photos are that you're seeing there. This is a perfect example what you have on the screen. That looks like the crowd assembling before the Charlie Kirk thing. Because of course, my skepticism as a journalist is, are these photos just fake, or are they photos taken from a different day?
Looks
I'm
pretty
very
darn real,
skeptical.
though. And this is his
It
tint.
sure does. It
Yeah.
sure does. So from a qualitative standpoint, these photos clearly appear to be legitimate photos of the event on that day. And so what I wanted to do though is, so as far as this person who published it, I was actually able to message the TikTok user about them, and there's not everything that I want to reveal just to kind of protect their identity. Um, Clearly, they were releasing controversial photos potentially, but it sounds like this person was doing it more for ideological reasons of knowing that these photos were important to the investigation and that was their motivation for posting the photos under an anonymous account. So it sounds like this person had clearly had access to these photos. I don't know exactly why. Naturally, this person had clearly had some sort of professional relationship with either the company or contractors or someone. This person had access to legitimate photos. So one of the most important thing I wanted to do is not just rely on the qualitative evidence of these photos with the what you just showed there, the crowd assembling, but I also wanted to bring some science to it. So I zeroed in on one of the photos. I believe it was just over 20 photos that were posted. And the account user did tell me that there were high resolution images. What you are seeing there is not the high resolution original photo. So whatever's out there, there are much clearer, much more detailed photos. So I wanted to take it a step further and see if I could use science and math to validate these photos. So I picked one photo in particular, and it shows the corner of the building that the alleged shooter jumped off of. We've seen that in security camera footage from the campus. Anyone who's looked into the assassination is immediately familiar with the alleged shooter jumping off a roof and walking away. And there was one picture that the TikTok user posted of that corner of the building, and that's why I used that as a focal point. And it just so happened that there were shadows that were easy to identify and measure using a series of steps, Google Earth, and in making determinations on distances of what you're seeing in the image. And so my goal was to validate these photos, or confirm that they're legitimate, by analyzing the shadows in the photos. The shadows are important because the shadows are defined by where the sun is in the sky. Um, and that's a known quantity. There are many tools available online to look up what the solar data is on a given day and a given location. So I know what the shadows should look like based on that information. It's a geometry thing. So my process for validating these photos using math involved a lot of trigonometry, angles, distances, and those were the mathematical methods I used. I have a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, so it was kind of easy for me to apply that knowledge and experience to analyzing the shadows. So I determined shadow lengths. This is all approximate. It's not perfect without being on the ground, but I did actually get in touch with someone who was able to make some measurements from the area of that photo. And so what I did was I know in the photo which way is north, and that was a key part of this, because all of the data that's related to solar information is based on references to true north. So I was able to determine where north was in the images, and I basically worked backwards. With the shadow lengths and knowing where the building is and knowing how long the shadow extends, I was able to come up with a determination of what time, at least from my calculations, what time of day the photographs, or this particular photograph, was taken at. And the two big pieces of information when it comes to shadows are altitude, or elevation, and azimuth. And so what that means is the azimuth is in reference to north, and it's the angle that the sun is in the sky when you're looking from left to right. Elevation of the sun refers to the angle in the sky upwards that the sun is at. So based on the shadow analysis, I came up with an approximate time based on the altitude and azimuth determined by my analysis of the shadows. And I used an app, a solar tracker app that I use in my drone work. I'm a professional
Helios.
drone pilot. I forget the name. I think it's like Sun Tracker or something like that.
There's a
But
few,
there,
yeah.
yeah, and there's also, I think, some official government websites that list historical data for the sun. So using using that app and that tool, I was able to plug in what the azimuth was that I determined from the shadows. And that told me a time, the time of day at that location that would produce that angle and produce that type of shadow. So I had that from the azimuth, but I also determined the elevation of the sun in the sky, and that also I could work backwards and find out a time, what time of day on campus a shadow would be produced like this. And the two times that I came up with were very close to each other, and they're not going to be exact because I don't have exact measurements of the shadow there, but I worked really hard to get as accurate information as I could. And these times corresponded roughly around 11. So Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 local time there in Utah. And the time I came up with was about 11:35 a.m. And that tracks with the flight track, because the great thing about these flight tracking services is you can pull, or ADSB at least, is that you can pull up a flight track that shows you the whole track, like a breadcrumb trail of the aircraft, but it'll also display the actual data from those pings. So it'll show you time, location, and altitude of the aircraft. Okay, so the solar data said about 11:35 a.m. So that's within an hour of Charlie Kirk getting shot. I was able to use now, so I have those two data points, altitude and azimuth, that determined a consistent time for when the photo was taken. But because I know the flight track of the aircraft, and I have information based on the photograph, what the line of sight that the camera was pointed at, what direction the camera was pointed at during that photo. And also, I was able to analyze angles. What was the angle of the camera as it was looking down at the campus? And I was able to, so it flew a rake pattern. So clearly one of these photos was taken at some point as it traveled in this back and forth. It flies in one direction, does a U-turn, and then flies back over in these perfectly straight lines using the systems like autopilot systems on the aircraft. Those are necessary to do this kind of survey work. And so looking at those passes, I could say there were 5 passes over the campus. And so I was able to, using the line of sight information and the location, I was able to draw a line that the photo was taken at. It was somewhere along this line that the camera was pointed at. And I extended this line, and I knew what direction the photo was being taken from. It was from the north, looking basically southwest. And so I extended this line across all of that rake pattern. I was able to eliminate the three bottom. There were five of these passes you can see on the screen there. I knew it wasn't the first, the lower two or three actually. So I knew the photo had to be taken from one of the top two passes. I also knew the altitude of the aircraft and the elevation of this particular part of campus. That allowed me to determine the angle looking down of the aircraft. And that helped me determine where this photo was likely taken. And so using those pings of where the aircraft was at what time, critically, the photo or where the aircraft was, the time of that moment, the final pass, that intersection point of the line of sight, turned out to be about 11:35 a.m. And so now I have three data points that all line up. In fact, one of these numbers was, within 30 seconds of each other. So it's very clear from the math that I was able to determine the exact, well, roughly exact, within maybe a few seconds, of where the aircraft was when the photo was taken. So at this point, I have three data points taken with different methods. They were independent of each other, which is critical if you're going to do this kind of mathematical analysis. You can't have one data point rely on another data point because it can cascade and give
Compound
you
errors.
exactly compound errors that lead to a wrong conclusion potentially. So it was important for me to get these three independent variables lined up, and they all
Let,
corresponded to the
let me just
same
ask you
time.
quickly, Eric, because I think this is brilliant and fascinating. I don't want people to become confused, however. Do I
Sure.
understand? I mean, basically, we look at this photo, and that's Charlie's tent. You've got
Hmm.
this information about the flight. I mean, obviously, they're taking pictures of the students. It's not even a
Yeah.
question. I mean, maybe this is ancillary to whatever else they were doing there. But again, as
Hmm.
far as the suspicion goes, this seems like a reconnaissance flight of this event.
Correct. Correct. I mean, that was clear. And so the photos, the first question I had was that yes, photos were taken. Related to that is who has custody of these images. And now that I was able to confirm, not just with the qualitative stuff of seeing the tent, the crowd develop, but there's science that backs up the legitimacy of these photos. So clearly, it was a photo reconnaissance flight that did, in fact, take photos. And so that kind of leads me to the next set of questions.
But
Why
before we
was
get
it
there,
there? Yeah.
let me just ask. So you're doing all this mathematical analysis to just basically eliminate any possibility that this photo is taken by some internet jokester who just wants a lot of clicks from Charlie Kirk related stuff. And you've basically proven that because the ADS-B data is separate from this photographic data and confirms the
Hmm.
location of the plane, corroborates the angle, the time of day. Okay, now I get it. So you're just
Hmm.
proving beyond a doubt that this is not some AI photo that somebody is just trying
Yeah.
to go viral and produce some controversial material. That's brilliant. That's really good.
And something to point out too is that I did this analysis on that key photo of the corner of the building that the alleged shooter jumped off of. But this analysis that I did can be done with all of the photos. Some of them might be more difficult to do this analysis with, but the math is the same. It doesn't matter, what it is. So that can be done.
It's just
And
a
really,
process, basically, right?
yeah, yeah,
Now,
and
let me ask you
exactly. It's just a
one other thing real quick. So on this TikTok account, Universe Hop, this is your TikTok or this is this unknown
no.
person?
This is this unknown person that I was able to contact in
Hmm.
TikTok messages and talk a little further.
How do we find you
Natural.
on TikTok?
Let's see here. I'm not sure. I don't use TikTok very often, so I'm not sure what my username
Well,
is right
don't
now.
worry about it now. We'll get back to that
Yeah,
later.
yeah,
Don't worry about that.
yeah,
Keep going,
yeah.
please. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So, oh, sure, no worries. So I was able to talk with them a little bit, get a little bit of background information. Naturally, they clearly had access to these images. and putting them out there is risky for them in their professional lives. And so I
Doesn't
wasn't
that suggest
surprised.
that they know something about this? That they're like, oh, I can't let this go unknown?
It sounds like the person had
Oops.
sort of. Oh, no
Sorry.
worries.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
TikTok music.
It's, yeah, they put up some music on their post. But it sounds like this person was aware of the shooting, and was able to look up missions related to this
Whoa.
aircraft.
Wow.
I don't know the details. I don't know what company that this person worked with. Naturally, I wanted to get more information and really start a discussion. Um, at one point, the person said that they were going to provide the full resolution images, but this person went cold. They stopped talking to me. So I don't know a whole lot of details, but it's clear that this person had access. I got the sense, I don't know for sure, I got the sense that this person didn't work for the company that did the surveillance. The company doesn't appear to really do much analysis. It sounds like what they do is just provide the service of flying over an area and collecting the data that's needed. So I got the sense that they were unrelated and not employed by Mark Inc. I
I
don't
think
know
we
that
should
for sure,
also
but
I think we should also say, and I don't mean to speak for you, but certainly this broadcast doesn't intend to implicate Mark Inc. in doing anything. Even if this was
not
their
at all.
aircraft and they did take these photographs, there's no evidence at all that they have any idea. They're just someone pays them to go
Mhm.
over there and take photographs. They don't know what they're for or what
Mhm.
it's being used for, nothing like that.
Right. Right, exactly. I don't imply at all that the company, knew why they were even photographing it. And so part of that question, important question, is who was the client for the UVU overflight? But it might not necessarily be a client sort of relationship. It's possible this company clearly has great contracts with the federal government. The military is likely who would contract a company like this to fly over the National Guard base. The military has a lot of needs to get imagery and data of military installations. So it's clear that this company does have a working relationship with law enforcement, government agencies. So it's entirely possible too that there wasn't like a typical paid decision to overfly UVU. I mean, it's entirely possible that someone, one of these existing clients, could call them up and say, "Hey, can you go out and get photos of it?" So that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's likely, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a traditional client of the company. Um, with rapid response capabilities, that's something that can happen quickly. So I really want to know who ordered the flight and why.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
at this point that's the key question.
So then let me take you to another area here. You've seen, I presume, the research and reporting on the U.S. Army Hades jet. You've seen some of the information, at least, about Candace Owens. Do you think these things are related? Do you have any insight into what those other aircraft were doing there? It's a lot of aircraft flying around just for Charlie Kirk to be sitting there talking, isn't it?
Right, right. I don't know any of that. I've been trying to catch up with some of Candace's reporting. Something that'll always get in the way of Candace Owens is that she's clearly a controversial figure. And so a lot of people will just immediately dismiss her. But what I've always felt about journalism is that really what matters is the product, the final product. A well-written, well-sourced report stands on its own. It doesn't matter who you are or even what your reputation is. If it's good journalism, it stands on its own, and that was a principle I always had, and a strong belief I always had since I started out with journalism as a citizen journalist, like many of your viewers. So I'm actually proof that you can start out as a citizen journalist and turn it into a professional, to turn it into a career. So that's why I'm sure a lot in your audience take that approach. But I want to remind them that if they stick with it, and no matter what their background is, no, I don't have a degree in journalism, but I do it. I do news production, things that, very few people work, that very few people without an official, credentialed past in journalism can do. So I just wanted to interject that for your audience, that it really, you can turn citizen journalism into a profession.
Well, and I think the
So
commoditization of news gathering and dissemination has allowed people like you and me who have specialized skills in other fields to get into journalism where traditional journalists wouldn't really be able to do this kind of reporting in the way that you are. So let me take you to some of the stuff that I found early on that was quite curious because, I just started looking around for videos and saw that this guy, Adam Bartholomew, had recorded a live stream, and I noticed that he was recording for like about 20 minutes or so, and then he's up
mhm,
on the roof over here talking to these guys, and
mhm.
literally 1 second before the shot is fired at Charlie, this guy's broadcast was cut out. Now, in this video, I'm going through and I'm analyzing. You and I were speaking before the show. This to me is clearly a bird. We see its body
Yes,
changing shape as it's moving through the sky. It's moving
yes.
downward in the way that a bird moves. It's flying over the valley here where there's a lake and probably fish and things that birds are interested in. It comes around over the building and it comes out of the shadows. Its color matches closely with the color of the edge of the building, so it's lost to video compression for a couple of frames. But then we see it fly into the tree, which is the type of thing that birds do. Here we see an
Mhm,
insect, which is amazing. I was quite surprised that a cell phone camera could image this thing as clearly as it does. But we see the wings
mhm.
flapping, the segmented body wiggling around as it moves through the air. Even on this live stream, people can see that level of detail. But then the shot is fired. All these people react immediately. This comes from a triple redundant recording that Adam made. And so that's
Mhm.
the only reason we have this. His live stream was cut right as the shot occurred. And that seemed very coincidental to me. I know you and I have only just begun to get to know each other, Eric, but a lot of what I do is walking around New York City, kind of razzing the cops, and they know me, and I have been, I believe, thwarted by electronic exploits now. So here's something flying that does not look like a bird to me because it's flying in a very kind of orbital pattern. It appears to be moving up. There's wiggling happening, but it's tough to tell if that's wing flapping or just video compression from a low resolution thing. I've blown it up like crazy. And of course, generally, in my experience, birds don't flock to gunshots and human chaos. They fly away from that. They're not sort of checking out what's going on over here, but that could be a reconnaissance drone. The other thing that
Mhm.
we noticed was this thing, which is emitting smoke. And I've never seen a bird do that. Certainly lithium polymer batteries are very volatile, and a drone experiencing some kind of failure might emit smoke. I'm also aware that certain industrial and military drone aircraft use hybrid gas electric fuel cells. Then we've got this other thing that shoots upward very fast. It's only 5 or 6 frames of video. Doesn't seem to be flapping its wings, and it's got a rigid body. It moves by very, very quickly. And then we have this final pass of this thing that just looks like a puck that shoots by in like 3 frames.
Mhm.
Have you seen this imagery before? And whether or not, what do you think about all this?
I'm actually highly skeptical that it was a drone, because with my professional drone work, a big part of my job, well, my first task with drone work is safety. Always, everything begins and ends with safety, and that means I spend a lot of time looking at the sky and trying to identify what I'm seeing. This is a case where video artifacts are a huge, huge factor. So for me, these videos are inconclusive. It's an important thing to ask. but I just couldn't take away any conclusions based on that. So. One
Well,
thing I want to add real
yeah.
quick is that one of the biggest flight tracking stories that came out early on was an aircraft that flew from Provo, Utah to Arizona. And the narrative with that story was that the aircraft shut off its responder. And it doesn't appear to be that's true at all. These receivers that collect that ADS-B data, there are often situations, especially around the West Coast, where there isn't good coverage with these receivers like I have. It actually costs usually about like $70 to get everything you need to broadcast and feed it to adsb.com. And so that aircraft looked like it had just dropped off ADS-B coverage.
I think that
I
the
was a little,
owner
yeah,
gave some statement as to why, but you're right. That was basically, it turned out to be potentially not what it initially appeared to be. Before we
yes.
move off of this drone piece right here, there
Mhm.
was sort of contemporaneous reporting about this U.S. Army Hades jet, which was again tracked through ADS-B data as having been flying right by the morning before the assassination and then coming back later in the day. And the thing, Hades stands for High Accuracy Detection and Exploitation System. And again, I agree with you that that video is potentially inconclusive. It's got evidentiary value, but we can't just look at it and say, oh, that's definitely a drone. The reason why I think it shows what probably are drones is because this Hades jet was there doing something. ISR is intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Hades, high accuracy detection and exploitation. Adam Bartholomew's video being shut down the instant before the shooting. There's another TikTok user who was also cut off from live streaming right before the shooting. It's all very suspicious, and we've got these reconnaissance flights. I mean, again, these are pieces of a puzzle that we're trying to put together to understand. It just seems a little too coincidental to me to be merely a coincidence that Adam's system cut out. What about those video images? I mean, what about the one making the smoke? What could that be if it's not a drone?
Um, that could be an video artifact. It's possible. A trail essentially
It
from
doesn't
the object.
really, I understand what you're saying, an MPEG
Mhm.
trail, but it doesn't seem to be that, the nature of the way that stuff, it looks to me like smoke, and also
Yeah.
why in the same video, the same lighting conditions, the same bit rate of encoding, why wouldn't we see similar MPEG artifacts on similar items moving at similar speeds? There's something that, that thing that does the orbital right before is moving at essentially the same speed. Why doesn't that have any artifacts? And the thing doesn't
Sure.
exhibit artifacts throughout the duration of the flight. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I appreciate your
Hmm.
exacting approach to evaluating evidence, but it takes me back to my initial question. Had you seen that evidence before? And maybe it's just a matter of you need to study it a bit more.
Hmm. Hmm. And one of the things is with my video journalism. Yeah, I do a lot of video editing, so I have a lot of expertise with that. So that's really what leads to my skepticism. I think it's very worthwhile to look into, and like you said, the apparent smoke trail is interesting, but from everything I've seen related to drone footage right over the event, I just came to the same conclusion that it's inconclusive. So I haven't seen anything where I'm like, that is a drone yet, but it's worth investigating. There are anomalies, absolutely, with those. So I encourage anyone to look further into that and analyze that. So I just don't have any conclusions
Yeah,
based on
sure.
it, but it's a very worthwhile topic to further investigate. And I'm
Yeah, and
sure with so
certainly.
many cameras there, someone might have another photo of the or video of the same object.
Well, maybe most people were running for their lives at this moment. Here we see the
Yeah.
early moments. The thing is not exhibiting any trail like artifact, and it's uneven in the way that smoke might be. A video trail would seem to have more of a pattern to it. This thing is moving upward and not flapping any wings of any kind. It's moving very quickly. And again, we've got a pattern of evidence here where you've spotted this turboprop doing a reconnaissance flight beforehand. This thing is shooting upward, not flapping any wings, moving very quickly. What could this be if it's not a drone?
Um, a bird. I think it's either a drone or a bird.
But how
Those
could
are
it be a
the
bird if it's not flapping its wings? And why is a bird? We haven't seen any other birds flying directly over this crowd in an hour and 7 minutes of footage. There are many birds, but they are all of a similar type. They look like eagles. There's a lot of eagles over there in Utah, and they're all over in the valley over the lake, like I said, where fish and other things that birds would be concerning themselves with. I don't know. I appreciate the skepticism, but I'm pretty convinced that we might have some drones here. There was another video that I had from our buddy with the Dolby Vision HDR that seemed to
oh goodness.
possibly be a drone. And I just want to take a quick look at that. I don't know, anything else that you're working on with regard to this? You said this person went dark. That's unfortunate, but of course it happens.
Yeah.
Any other leads or what you might go to next with that?
So one of the leads I have, and again, I want to emphasize that the public seeing the imagery and the full resolution imagery and the complete photo set, which could number in the hundreds, if not thousands, of photos. My main concern is that the public gets to see that. Um, so yeah, yeah. What was the question again?
Well, just how we might get to that now that this
Oh, yeah,
person
yeah,
who's
yeah.
gone
So, oh,
dark.
okay. So, I want to find out who was the client, or really more specifically, who ordered the flight. And there are services out there that provide GIS imagery that's just sort of geographical data that's related to like LiDAR. But there are websites out there and services out there that provide that kind of imagery. So I'm wondering, if this person on that created the TikTok account was somehow able to access it through that. Again, this could be coincidental. It could even be that UVU hired them to survey the school related to preparing for a construction project. That's one common need for this kind of imagery. But I think anyone investigating this really needs to try to find out who the source, what company, organization was the source of these images that the TikTok user was able to obtain. And one of the things I would love is for Mark Inc. to at least release a statement. They have clients that highly sensitive clients for sure. I mean, foreign governments are not going to want this company to release information on it. So I would fully expect that the company would have nothing to say about that. But just getting the company on record with some sort of statement about this, answering a few questions, even if their answer is that we can't answer the question, that would be really big. So, I would hope that other journalists out there can put pressure on the company to at least come up with a statement on it. Um, if this TikTok user doesn't post anything else, well, maybe there's someone else, a whistleblower, that does have access to those images that could come out and release the rest of them. So yeah, yeah, I think it's possible that there are some websites out there that provide this kind of survey imagery that might have access to that, and someone who works in this industry might have a unique ability to obtain these images. I'd love to know who has custody of these images currently. Does the company that contracted or ordered it, if it was just a coincidence, do they have access to it? Does the government have access to the full, and I'm talking about the full set of images that are high resolution, because what you're seeing on TikTok is not, and yeah, I included that also in an X thread. I included all of those photos where I outlined this fact that the first question I had, were images taken, that was answered. Um, so so yeah, I think any further investigation really should revolve around who has custody of those images. It would be very unlikely for those images to be provided by the FBI or state and local authorities. So I think at this point, if we're going to see the full set of images, maybe that would come out in a court case if it turns out the law enforcement authorities have possession of the
But
full resolution
I just
images.
wonder if they even know, I just wonder if anybody
Mhm,
who's not looking at your X account or watching this broadcast even knows. I mean, I would ask, but I
mhm,
think I already know the answer. I'm sure Cash Patel hasn't contacted you and asked you anywhere near the number of questions that I've been asking. And just to push back a little bit on something, and again, I appreciate the
mhm.
skepticism, but if they wanted to take surveillance photos for construction, wouldn't it make more sense that you do it when there's not 3,000 people standing here so that you could just look at the site and not have all this other stuff? It
Yeah,
just seems so suspicious that
yeah.
if the photos are taken, this is what you do if you were going to shoot the guy in half an hour.
And I'm very skeptical through every step of this, but I mean, it's undeniable the possibility that this wasn't a coincidence, that they weren't doing a survey of something else, because the flight did go over Interstate 15, and I could see the state of Utah being interested in that, so that's always a possibility. But it really is. There's a lot of coincidences here that make it a very important, reasonable question to ask. Was this flight related to a conspiracy to kill Charlie Kirk? I mean, it's just an obvious, reasonable question to ask.
Absolutely. And I think that is a perfect moment for us to break. It's been great meeting you, Eric. I really appreciate your journalism, your skepticism. I don't need you to come on here and agree with what I say, but it's good
Mhm.
to have a professional and a skeptical eye. I think people are going to want to hear more about your research into Jeffrey Epstein's screwy jet. I want to talk to you about that 727 and what they might have been dropping out of that back
Yes.
door. It was from 1969, before the Cooper vane was installed. So I know a little bit about aviation
Okay.
myself. I think you and I could have some good conversations, but people should definitely follow you on X at Rosenwald_Eric. And they can also go to Eric RosenwaldPhotography.com. Check out everything you would want to know about Eric. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up today?
So, one last thing is, yesterday when I got a hold of a searchable database for Jeffrey Epstein, I encourage people to go to my website. It's on the sidebar, the links to a two-part series about Jeffrey Epstein and his involvement with my alma mater, the University of Arizona here in Tucson. And I'm finding some really, really amazing stuff in these documents that the House Oversight Committee released, and I am actively reporting on that right now. And there's some amazing stuff that's coming out about that. So anyone who follows me on X can find that out. It involves an extremely prominent public figure, intellectual. Turns out to be Noam Chomsky, was central to Epstein, apparently central to Epstein funding the University of Arizona with his connections with Epstein. That there are tons and tons of mentions of Chomsky in this. So it's a little bit of a sensitive story here because it's extremely controversial. Jeffrey Epstein was heavily involved with academic research institutions, MIT, Harvard, and there's a lot of evidence that shows that this thing with him being involved in academia was tied to my university here. So I'm going to be doing some reporting on that. I was working on it this morning, but there's already some amazing information coming out from the Epstein documents. So I'd encourage anyone to follow me and do that. Maybe we could talk about it sometime, especially because
Absolutely.
it involves such a prominent, not just
Yeah,
academic figure, but political activist. I mean, Noam
absolutely.
Chomsky is one of the most cited public intellectuals of all time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
this
we also got to
involves
be
him.
careful
It's
though, because
exciting.
Chomsky is still alive, so you never know, he might want to
Yes.
sue you. But you speak quite carefully and very professional
Well, my
in your work.
my reporting, the two reports that are on my website, I had a ghost editor with an extremely esteemed background in journalism. So I cleared it. There's nothing in this report that you have up that's really individual reporting. It's connecting a lot of different stories and some original reporting related to the flight tracking. So yeah, I'm pretty much lawsuit proof
I like that.
with Chomsky.
Yep.
The facts stand on their own. These reports are a conglomeration of already existing reporting. So I'm going to be digging into that, and it might be a wild ride here in the coming days and weeks. So I'm excited, but yeah, I'd be happy to talk with you about something like that in the future. And really, hopefully, I'll get more information on this Charlie Kirk flight. But I would encourage the audience to do their own investigation and look into especially website services or companies that provide this kind of imagery, because that might be the best route to finding out, first of all, if we can get the images, but help answer the question of who ordered this flight over the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Eric Rosenwald, thank you for joining me. Excellent to meet you. And I want to remind everybody they can support Crowdsource the Truth on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. You can follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe there. I look forward to speaking with you again, Eric. Have a great day.